All right, in this tutorial, in this video, we are going to be looking at tutorial 3, which is looking at displaying the records in the database in the local storage and having an edit and delete button where you can delete them and edit them. So first of all, what you have to do is when I click edit on this page, you go to an edit page. So first of all, you have to create this page. And what we're going to do is when you click on this edit button, you're going to pass the ID for this record. Now, as we know, databases start at 0. So this will be 0, 1. And if I click that, and if I go to look at the URL, see here, we've got edit, which is the router path, but we're passing the ID for that record along to this page. And this page will grab that ID, go to the database, grab that record from the database, display it inside these form fields. I can change it, then submit it, and it'll go back and update the database. So first of all, you need to create this page. And this one, I've already created it, but you then have to go along and create the path for this page. And if I go down to the app module TS file, I see that it is here. Path, edit, that's the name of my router path. And see here, I've got an extra bit on the end, which allows me to attach a variable on the end. And that variable will represent the record ID. What I do then is we want to then create this page, the forms, the table, which we loop over from all the records and we display them. And that will be in your list employees page. And that's this page here. Now, what I've got here is a little div tag at the end, which is if is shown is true, then show the table. If is shown is false, don't show the table. So if there are no records, don't show the table. And what in the coding and the TS, it basically, I look at the database, and if the length of it is 0, I don't show it. Now, here we have a table. Now, tables, HTML tables look like this. We have a starter for T. We have a TR, which represents a row, and each cell in the table will be represented by TDs. So depending on how many you want, you then close your row, and if you want another row, you have another row, and then you close your table at the end. So that's a format, HTML format for a table. Now, what we've got here is a HTML format, and I've got my first row, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells in it, and that's first name, last name, date of birth, edit and delete. Then after that, my next row, now I can't say do each individual row individually. What I do is dynamically create these rows by having an ng-for loop. And what that does is it says, let the data of results. Now the results in your TS file is me going and getting all the local storage data, putting it in an object called results. And what I do is I loop over each record, and each record is going to be represented by data. Hence, you can then display it, data first name, data last name, data day of birth. Now, then I have a button, which is a delete, and it's a function here. And when I click it, I pass the ID of that record I'm looking at, as I is the index of the data record. So let's have a look at that delete down the bottom. Here it is here. And what I'm doing is there's the ID for the record. And what I'm doing, I'm going to ES, I'm calling, which is my, if you see in my constructor, it's the instance of the employee service here. So I'm calling that and calling the delete employee function written in that service and passing it the ID. So let's have a look at the service and the delete. Here it is. There it is. That's the delete employee, and there's the ID. And what I'm doing here is I'm calling get employees, which is this one, and that gets all the employees and returns it as an object. I'm putting it into this variable called data. And then what I'm doing, I'm calling data, which is an object, and I'm splicing, which is a method which allows me to delete one record. And what I have to do is give it the ID, which is that one I'm passing, and say how many I want to delete, which is 1. And then once I've deleted that one record from the copy, I then put the copy back up into the local storage. So let's go back to our form here. Now, the next one is the edit button. And what I'm doing here is I've got a router link. Remember that router link you created for the edit employee page? That's here, edit, and the ID you're passing. So that'll go to that edit page and pass it that ID. So when I click on Mary Shelley, it's going to grab the ID, this ID. It's going to go router link, send me to the edit page, and this ID will come to this page. And in the code for this page, we need to go to the database, get that record, and then put it into this form. So let's go and look at the ID edit page. Here, all you have to do really is to create this form is go to the add employee page, copy the code from the HTML, and paste it in there. And that's here, exactly like that pasted, except we'll call this edit form. All the form controls are the same. Now in the code here, what we have to do is again, import all our libraries of code. Here we're importing the form builder, the employee service, and the routers. We're going to then create instances of each of those, FB for form builder, ES for employee services, and route for the router. What I'm going to do then is grab that ID that I passed to this page. And what I do with the route instance, it has a method called parameters, and I subscribe to it. And what it does is allows me to grab that ID, and then I'm going to put it into this variable called I, which is this I. Then what I'm going to do is go and call the get employees function for employee services and put it into this results object. Now in my form builder, when I'm creating my edit form, normally you wouldn't have anything in here. What I'm doing is putting in here, which defines that field, the results, which is all the database from the local storage, and I'm giving it the ID record and saying ID, which is whatever ID it is, could be 2, and first name, last name, date of birth. So that will fill up this form with whatever information I got from that record. Then what I'm going to do is that when I click submit, I'm going to call this edit person from the services, and I'm going to pass it the whole form value, all the form object, and the ID. Let's have a look at that one. Here it is, the edit. Here's the person object I pass, which is all the forms, and the ID. What I'm going to do is get all the data from the database, put it into data. I'm going to go data, and I'm going to go to the ID of that record, which is the one you pass, and I'm going to assign it to person object, which is all the data you have here. Then I'm going to replace that object with the one of the employees, and so that will update the database. And what I need to do though is, even though I've done that, but to make you see it on our pages, I just want to update the results with what's in the local storage that's there. And then I navigate back to the list page. And here I go Mary, CCCC, Shelley, CCCC, a new date of birth, there, and submit. And there it is. It all gets done. And really, that's it. I know it's quite a lot, but if you follow it through follow the tutorial 3, you should get all that done. And if you're not sure of any bits of it, just have a look at the video here and that'll explain it. Okay.